So, Brent, one of the areas that I think we all sort of intuitively understand is valuable and a valuable concept in the kingdom of God, but sometimes really hard to model or to get others to really take hold of is these ideas of living out in community authenticity
Yeah.
or vulnerability. Like we
Mhm.
want to constantly kind of impress each other. We want to kind of show our, put our best foot forward. And yet in the kingdom of God, it's all about kind of, I was always fascinated by the idea that in the Bible, none of the heroes of faith are really painted in the way that you would think,
Mhm.
right? They kind of shown the good, the bad, the ugly in their life,
Yeah.
but Jesus was always the ultimate hero, right? That these
Mhm.
people were just being authentic and real
Yeah.
in their faith. So how do we model that in our
Mm.
community? And as a
Mhm.
small group leader,
Mhm.
so often that can be a challenge to try to get the community around your life to model that. So any thoughts there?
Yeah, I think you're working against just natural barriers to authenticity that are common for all of us. It's just not expected, I think, of us as individuals to really show who we are and let
Yeah.
others in.
Yeah.
But it is so essential to small group leading. And I think a
Mhm.
few practical things. One is, if you want your small group to be vulnerable, you have to demonstrate that. You have to model that. So if you can share something with your guys or girls that is really something they could use against you, almost like something you're trusting them with,
A little
it
risky.
shouldn't be something that you would just share with anyone.
Yeah.
Right? It should be
Yeah.
something you're saying, hey, by sharing this, I am defining the relationship and saying, I
That's good.
want to go deep with
good.
you.
Yeah. I think another thing that in my mind is always so helpful is if you can really emphasize a community of honor.
Yes.
And sometimes,
Mhm.
not necessarily always has to go there first, but I think oftentimes focusing on honor as kind of a foundation of the community is a great place to start sometimes. Because once you've built this sense of like, not just honor, we could talk about honor in that section, but not just honor for its own, in the wrong way of saying that or doing that. We're honoring necessarily like, hey, them for what they did, but just honoring the value that they have in the kingdom of God. And when somebody feels like, hey, I really feel a sense of belonging and acceptance from the honor, like, man, you're a big deal. Like, I love you, man. You're such, and just those words of affirmation over them, whether or not they've earned it, so to speak, in the community. And sometimes, especially when they haven't, like putting more emphasis there. Not that honoring what they're doing well isn't also important, but sometimes just honoring the value of God in them.
Yes.
Kind of helps build that safe space, if you will, where they can feel like this is a place that I can really be authentic with my brothers or sisters.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you want to think through where you have conversations that are going to be vulnerable. It can be as simple as, is the location private or not? And that can lead towards enhancing vulnerability, just letting someone let their guard down. It's going to be more natural in an environment where they're not worried about, are people going to overhear, or are they going to run into someone that they know?
Right.
And so thinking through that can be really helpful. Yeah.
I think sometimes the other thing I've found is sort of queuing people up in advance. Sometimes in my discipleship with people, I found like they're learning to really be authentic one-on-one. And that's great. That's fine. That's very natural to start more with that safe relationship before that safe community. But I would often start to kind of push them like, hey, do you think you could share that? Next time we get together with our small group community, I think it would really just set the tone and really give them a sense of purpose beyond just themselves being vulnerable, but that they were helping me kind of create that environment for others as well.
Right.
And just gave that sense of purpose and really permission with that intentionality. If I kind of queued them up advance, instead of it like in the moment, like, hey, who has something to share, and expecting that like off the cuff to kind of always be the way it goes.
I think another thing is, when we think about vulnerability, I think typically we go to something that I'm ashamed of that I need to share, but vulnerability can also include the process of learning and growing, things that you're wrestling with, when you don't have the answers, and admitting that you don't know, that is another way that we can instill a sense of vulnerability.
It's good. Yeah, the journey with Christ is going to be full of, refining and just being authentic about the journey that we're on is certainly nothing to be ashamed of, and yet sometimes we even ignore the opportunities to share that journey with others.
Yeah.
So, awesome. So as you're building your small group community, remember authenticity and that sense of vulnerability is so foundational to so many other attributes that we talk about in the kingdom of God.
Yeah.